Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Juju, what did I say the top title was?
Is daydreaming meditating?
Meditation. Good look.
Is daydreaming meditating?
Yes. Is daydreaming meditating? I'm sure you're wondering, or perhaps you just concluded something about that based on other teachings that you've heard. But since you're looking at this teaching, teacher, listening to this teaching, I'm going to say, I don't know. If you sit down and take this posture and intend to see what is moving, if it's a daydream, then observe that. There's nothing to correct. It is a misunderstanding based on all kinds of reasonable rationalizations. Of course, we need to get rid of evil things, bad things. But it is quite, it fools us to think that we can get rid of anything. Why? There aren't any things. So my instruction in Shikantaza, as I gave, I don't know, a few days ago, is your basic instruction coming from this old man is sit down, first find a wall or a tree stump or your refrigerator, your closet door, something where not much is happening. Sit a couple of feet away, hold very still without being rigid. Don't maintain it, but hold it with some, with your intention, not with your maintenance. Those are different things. Ego intends very little, and when it does intend, it immediately wants to know why. What's the result? Why should I do this? Sorry if my tone is changing. Can't be helped. Can't be stopped. So sit down, hold still, hold very still. If you actually go into the areas of your life where you can actually hold still your body, keep the noises to a minimum, keep it as clear and simple a situation as possible, then observe what moves. That doesn't mean try to stop doing this or stop anything. I even say, if somebody says, well, I can't stay awake, and I say, well, fall asleep. Don't fight with anything. No more war. Start now. Start now. Stop fighting with everything. I don't care how terrible the thought, how evil the thought, or how intense the emotion, or whatever you're labeling it, depression, anxiety, jealousy, fear, whatever you're labeling it, don't fight with it. You could say include it, but it gets included if you don't push it or pull on it or shut down on it. Then it's included. Why? It's not separate in the first place. It just looks like it. It looks intensely like there's something needs to be done. This is materialism. And so each person, any person, this person or any person, if you daydream, if you want to do something with it, I would say, well, enjoy it. Good. Sit down, hold still, and watch what moves. It's the watching what moves, regardless if it's somebody riding by in a motorcycle through your ear consciousness, hearing consciousness, or whether it's watching some daydream, whether it's a sex fantasy or a money fantasy, or I can never get anything right fantasy, or what am I going to do about my niece and her issues and her problems. All of that, whatever the daydream is, whatever it is, just observe. Just observe the daydream. And also, when the daydream is arising, as I've said many times, notice your tendency to want to do something with it. Observe that also. observe what is moving, including what shows up from your karma, from causes and conditions that are untraceable. What shows up, watch the adding. Allow it to just be that particular rosebud, just that particular lotus, just that, as it is. But it's not as it is so much if you add something to it. But if you see that you add something to it and just observe that without disagreeing with that, or disagreeing with the daydream, or disagreeing with the addition, this is Shikantaza. And it's a path, it's not a goal. We have to use some goals, otherwise people would, what I mean by people, a bunch of people. Otherwise people wouldn't come this way at all. They would think, well, why would you have a basis, suffering, difficulty, and then a path, and no fruition? How would you have that? Therefore we don't. With the concentration, focus needs to be on whatever's arising. That's the path. Whatever arises in your, when you sit down to hold still and just put your whole attitude on receive, whatever shows up is the very thing, very situation, the very object of meditation that you need, even if it's a daydream, even if it's depression, even if it's anxiety, even if it's jealousy, whatever that is, just the two words that I use all the time is just observe, just receive. Just observe what that is. And then if it's not doing anything, you can just, if it's going away, you can observe it. If it's coming toward you, you can receive it. If it's going away from you, you can receive that it's going away. But I wouldn't get too conceptual about it. When I say I wouldn't get too conceptual, am I saying stop yourself from being conceptual? No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying observe how that conceptual situation tends to protect you or me or anyone from the prickliness or the scariness or the abrasiveness of whatever it is that's showing up. Other forms of meditation are about trying to work with just your awareness and solidify it or secure it or make sure that you're emotionally stable, which I call hypnosis. I'm not against all the Tibetan lineages for doing Shine and Lakton. Of course not. I'm totally for them because that was all done situationally. This is situationally too. I'm talking to, I don't know how many people, there's 40 people online, and there's 41, 42, 43, 45, 46, 47, 48, it's exactly 50. I think that's a mystical number, you'd say. 50. I'm not. I can't really count myself. I'm running my mouth. But if you wouldn't be here if you weren't ready to hear this. I don't think you need to go through all that labyrinth, that construction. If you're listening to me, you're ready to hear this. Just look at it. I think it's very hard to do. I'm about to say it's very, very difficult to do it, but you don't even need Buddhism. You don't need, you really don't. If you understand what I'm saying, we're done. You don't need a teacher. Go do it on your own. But if you don't understand, hang around. And if you think you understand, you don't. There's not a conclusion. You can't conclude. If there's a conclusion, there's a concluder. How do you do this? Doesn't sound, what is the word for this? It's not a parabola. It's some kind of a paradox. I knew it started with a P. Parabola. It's not a pontoon boat. It's a paradox. So you aren't going to be able to make this work. If you're trying to make it work, you might as well be working in a sawmill, sharpening the saw blades, cutting logs. We need lumber. The path is to get a sawmill, cut the logs, and then the fruition is we got logs. Lincoln Logs. We've got logs, but this particular situation is a spiritual path. You're going to need to do this with your awareness. The very awareness that you just ate breakfast with, if you ate it, drink tea or coffee or water or whatever. That awareness. Your awareness. It looks like that belongs to you. It does not. It doesn't belong to anyone. Why? There isn't anyone. Don't believe that. I'm not saying, oh, Sokuzan says that, so I should believe that. No, don't believe, don't disbelieve, don't look away. The three poisons in a tortoise shell.
Geez, I'm buying. Are there any red flags or indicators that we've left shikantaza while we're practicing?
I think it would be, I understand, but I think it would be so specific. I think you will know what your red flags are, but they might not be the other person's. That's why you'll notice, you've been here for 10 years, and I'm a student for a long time, you notice that I just tell you to sit, I don't tell you too much about it. Even though you might come and share with me what's happening, if you recall, I don't say too much about it, because I trust you. You're the Buddha, not me. You're the Buddha. You don't know it yet. I don't know what else to say. Yeah.
Geez, I'm bowing. Is there another aspect to meditation that is not content? Bowing.
You could say that seeing the space around the content is the beginning of that. And eventually, the content and the space are not two different things. Ultimate. It's referred to as ultimate, and it's just described in a relative way. There's no way you can describe it. No way you can say, now I'm seeing my thoughts and the space in which the thoughts are occurring are not separate, are sandokai, the equality of things. There's no labyrinth, there's no opening, that's circular. So you get into that area that you're asking about. It's darkness. That's all we know about light. Go there.
Geez, I'm bowing. Does the darkness have to be that immediately triggers feelings of negativity or scariness? Does darkness always related to that uncomfortable area?
At some point, it will stop. There's no guarantee of it, because if we do that, then we're back to a negotiating some kind of. If you do this, that'll happen. If you do this, that'll happen. Go ahead.
Geez, I'm bowing. Contrasting that darkness with flatness, when meditation just seems quite flat for weeks or months on end.
Oh, you've experienced that?
Does that indicate or point at anything?
Yes, it indicates its flatness, weeks on end. That's it. That concludes itself, you know, so the way you describe it, it's concluded. It doesn't necessarily lead to one person. Let me say it this way: one person may need in their particular karma the causes and divisions that arises there, emotions, their life, their relationship to others, their relationship to the sangha, whatever is happening. That situation may show up one way for one person, another way. One person may never go through anything like that at all. They might be walking through fire all the time. Another person is swimming in a river. Another person uses those kind of metaphors. In other words, it's another one that seems to be flying around looking for some kind of reference point, like a bird with no trees, that kind of thing. Shikantaza will take you into that. Another person just sits and might even come out if they have the guts to say it. I think it was in one of the jhana states. I'm not sure that anybody know about any jhana states. So it's so incredibly variable. But even this talk I'm giving now, is quite variable. Everyone's assumptions or understandings or conclusions or lack thereof or receiving this talk as is intended is going to be different from person to person. You can't find a reference point. So if you need a reference point, the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha, the teacher, the teaching, and the community, powerful reference points. Return to it. We do it. You can say we're doing it mechanically. It might look like that until you've done it, a few 100,000 of them. And you can see it's not mechanical at all. Nothing happens to us. Intend to train yourself. Intend to see the truth. Intend. I just recently, a person's been a student of mine for a long time. We had I won't say what we said. We had an interview, and I told that person to stop meditating until further notice. They did. So I know they're a student. But
Cheers on bowing. Are there any indicators in meditation? Bowing.
Indicators of what?
Does anything that arise in meditation acknowledge or point to something else?
Until it doesn't. It will always point to something else, which means you think there's something else around the corner, something else, because you are actually assuming, not accusing you of anything, you're just describing it the best I can based on your inquiry. You don't realize what this is yet. As long as this looks like something else, you're going to look for something else. Something is hidden, something is hidden. It's an open secret, as it said in the definition. It's right in front of you. How many times have I said that? Has everybody heard me say that at least once or twice? What you're looking for, you're looking right at it. It's just that it's covered up with your spider webs and gauze and paraphernalia of your ideas and should be and shouldn't be. That can't be true. I don't think that's what Trump meant. I think what he meant is this. Well, I don't think he meant it. Sometimes people say, well, I'm reading by it. I don't know what he meant by anything. I'm not going into that guy's mind. Go ahead, Agra.
Akaran bowing. Sokuzan, can you talk a little bit more about just raw energy when we meditate, and that there would be no description of that energy, just just energy and space when we meditate?
What do you want to know?
Like sometimes space is very closed, and are you meaning space or are you meaning something different when you say space?
What do you want to know? I realize you're doing that, but make it as simple as possible, and then I can respond in a way that is will be clear to you, but clear to others. Because everybody's understanding of your question is going to be different, just like yours. Go ahead, please.
Sometimes, well, a lot when I meditate, I don't have thoughts, but I have a lot of sensation of energy and following that energy. And there's no sense to it. There's no definition of it. But then,
what's your question?
How do I work with that space? Does it? Sometimes it, yeah.
How are you doing it now?
How am I doing it now?
How are you working with it now?
My mind goes along, stays with it in the present moment until suddenly I try to give it out to the world if it's a good feeling, if it's a feeling that I'm feeling. And sometimes I catch myself doing that.
Okay. So less is better. Sit down. Your basic job as a meditator is to hold still and watch what continues to move without interfering, without accepting it, without rejecting it, without doing anything. Don't give it out to the world. Don't do anything. It's another kind of a practice that we can do. But not shikantaza is less is better. That doesn't mean that if a whole lot of stuff starts flooded with all kinds of emotions and thoughts, that you should cut those down. So I'm not talking about less is better in terms of control. I'm saying less is better as far as you actually producing anything, producing an idea, pushing on something, pulling on something, shutting down. Produce nothing. Receive everything. Allow everything to come as it is. And so go ahead, please.
I guess that's where I'm at, is these ideas come in and I don't always recognize them as thoughts. And yeah.
Doesn't matter. Just as long as you're on receive, then whatever shows up, whether you would, as soon as something shows up and you label it energy, you stop receiving, because now you've identified it. It no longer can be what it is. It's your idea about what it is, which is the very nature of confusion. But if you see what it is, it'll break your heart.
Okay. Hakaran bowing. Thank you.
Certainly. Shoto.
Sort of bowing. You've been emphasizing intention a lot lately, and to intend to just observe when we're sitting.
Yeah.
Sometimes when things get really hot on the cushion, my intention might switch to
Turning on the air conditioner?
Yeah. by daydreaming.
Yes.
Does that intention to daydream override the intention to observe?
Not necessarily. Because your intention to daydream also arose. Not separate from everything else. Confusing? Sit more. Don't sit less, sit more. Well, further questions? You.
A question from Semi in Portland.
Semi.
How do I know if I am pushing something that arises away as opposed to letting it fall away with my awareness?
So just the nature of your question is telling me that you just need to sit a lot more. Because you really can't let anything. Letting something is ego language for staying in control. Very slight, but the personhood is still there, has an identity that is believed in. So don't do anything. Sit more. Do some block sitting where you're sitting 4 hours at a time. That last hour is quite a wasteland, to quote T.S. Eliot. Sir.
Can we leave shikantaza when we're on the cushion?
Leave it. Is the body held very still without being rigid? Are you sitting? Are you talking about you're sitting there and in your mind stream you're leaving shikantaza?
Because I wonder about body movement too.
Just observe the body movement. A lot of people think that you need to be very, very still and stationary and maintain it. The maintenance is the issue. It's not still and stationary or holding still and observing. Do that, and then if your body starts to tell you your knee hurts, move your knee, but do it intentionally and do it. Just move your knee or make a shift in your body alignment or whatever, and then return to holding still. You might have to do that every 2 or 3 minutes if your body is giving you a lot of trouble. But it's the intention to remain still or hold still, not remain, but hold still. And if the body starts saying something else, then be respectful to the body. And let's move. You might have to stand up. You might have to go outside and go for a walk. Depends on what it is. It's very, very situational. In this way, each person is relating with their whole body-mind situation karmically as it is, rather than some kind of something that came from 3 centuries ago that somebody says this is the way you have to do it. I came from 3 centuries ago, and I'm telling you, you don't have to do that. You don't have to do that. What do you have to do? You don't have to do anything. You can continue to spin in your karmic orbit lifetime after lifetime. But if you're here and you're listening to this is an opportunity for you to see deeply into what this is. Don't believe anything I say. Consider what I'm saying. What you're looking for is in front of you. It's the wall, the refrigerator, your cat, or sirens going by outside your building. Your very discursive thought, your very daydream is reality. Why? Because it's unreal. Why? Because you're seeing it. The Buddha did not awaken to reality. The Buddha, as far as I understand, I wasn't there, the Buddha awoke to delusion and confusion and suffering. And this is how he was able to teach, because he didn't miss anything. Because he didn't separate himself from anything. because he saw that he was everything. So everywhere he looked, he saw the Buddha. He didn't see himself, a picture of a old monk or young monk.
Do we need to return to our intention on the cushion?
Not generally. I would say if you're sitting for long periods of time, then there might be some kind of that returning, but don't maintain it. You return to it and then do whatever it wants. When I say let, you don't even do that. Just the returning is the important part. If you do enough of it, you won't have any difficulty with maintaining the issue of maintaining, which creates fixation, which the ego loves for the mind to do that, because then there becomes a resting place. Might as well call it a jhana state. I would, without criticizing that people may need to go through those states, and they're somewhere. They're not here, but they're somewhere doing that. I'm not objecting to that, but I'm also not teaching it the same way as I'm not objecting to Tonglen. I don't teach it, and there's definite reasons why I don't. Did I answer your question? I did. Didn't feel like it. Felt like I kind of went around it to do what I wanted to do. You sure? No?
Thank you, Valley. You said if our knee hurts, move it. And that seems really simple. Movement for me on the cushion more often feels more complicated. Like if I am sitting there,
Louder.
there's a little bit of fidgetiness.
Yes.
Or just not wanting to sit still. It doesn't feel like it's often related to physical pain.
I understand. Do you move anyway, or do you?
I feel like I move a lot. So
Okay.
I'm wondering if there's a different way to handle
Okay.
that type of movement.
Okay, now I'm going to ask you something, and I want an immediate response. Do you move? Do you actually move a lot, or do you feel like you move a lot? Say it. Say it.
I don't know.
Okay, good one. That's Shikantaza. That's Shikantaza. Don't worry about it. When pushed, you can't come to a conclusion about it. No?
I don't know.
All right, good. You don't need to know anything. I don't. Further questions? Biyun.
When I sit, how much mental or thought effort should I put into doing this or not doing that, according to a lot of the teachings that are coming up today? Bowing.
So basically what I'm saying is to practice Shikantaza, find a space, sit down, hold still without being rigid, in other words, without trying to maintain it, but anyone can just sit down and hold still. And then at some point we become fidgety, and then try to hold still a little longer, but don't make a war out of it. Actually do something that you can lean back a little bit. Maybe if you're in a chair, or lean forward a little bit, and then return to stillness. Return to stillness. So it's kind of a returning to it rather than maintaining it, or come back and intend to sit still. And then watch what the mind does with that. Watch how we get fidgety, or anything will happen there to try to get in the way of that stillness. That's awareness. That's not failure. It's awareness. This takes a while. So I might have missed what you were looking for. What is it you want to know? And that might be easier.
Yun bowing. Well, I'm kind of looking at this in two parts conceptually: physical effort of getting to the cushion and staying still and being easy in that area, but the mental effort of watching, of observing, of not adding, all of those kind of ideas that happen in the head or the mind. How much effort there? Bowing.
So get to the cushion, sit down, hold still, and then what continues to move that you don't have any say-so about is the mind stream. Just observe. It's like watching birds fly towards a tree and land, and then watching the bird take off. It takes no effort at all. That's a visual consciousness. And it's very true in the thought stream, the mind stream also. Things occur, they show up. It's like you're slightly bored with the whole thing. You eventually will get bored, which is a sign you're giving up on entertainment. So I would just say, sit more. Sit more. Do some block sitting if you haven't done. I know you've done some, but do some block sitting so that you go deeper into that area of where you're looking at the question that showed up here as the efforting part, trying to do it. Jacob.
Take bowing. Do you ever recommend, or is it beneficial or detrimental to write about unique things I experienced during meditation, or to reflect on them after meditation? Bowing.
Well, I think you could reflect on them after meditation if you want to, but I would not write anything down. Occasionally I will tell specific people because of the causes and conditions, what they present to me as what's happening with them. I might say, write some notes down. Sometimes I even have somebody write a particular issue on an index card, put it in front of them as a concept. And then I might say, gaze at the wall for 55 minutes and then look down at that concept for 5 minutes in an hour, something like that. So I would say, keep it very simple. I wouldn't say that would be a good idea. It's like the story I've told several times. Allen Ginsberg, the poet, was going into retreat, and he got his direct instruction, as I did, from Trungpa Rinpoche about what to do in retreat. And he wanted to know if he could keep a notepad with. He's a poet, he wanted to write his poems, and Rinpoche wouldn't let him do that. He said, "No, just go in and meditate. Don't take a notepad." So he's telling a famous American poet not to write poems. But that was his teacher, so he did what he was told, I presume. Although he might have snuck in a couple of scraps of paper and, found some way to justify doing that or rationalize it. If I put the notepad behind me, or if I close my eyes and write it, ego's very sneaky. I'm sure you've all noticed. Further questions?
A question from Marco in the Netherlands.
Marco in the Netherlands.
A teacher told me once, don't get caught in the absolute. Can you say something about it?
I can. I would say that the concept, don't get caught in the concept of the absolute, because the ego will feed off from that. Self-centeredness that has not been seen through as a charlatan will feed on that conclusion. And if someone has a strong bias, I would say, not even a bias, but a strong proclivity to turn everything into concepts, in other words, an intellectual, someone with Vajra nature, strong Vajra concepts, structures, analysis. Some people are extremely swamped by that in their personhood. So I would say, Marco in the Netherlands, I would say, is that enough? More. Don't do anything unless you have to. Don't conclude anything. I think that's how I would say, somewhat similar to what that teacher was saying to me.
He has another question. If ego doesn't exist, why do you talk about it?
Because we think it exists. We think we are somebody. We think we're going somewhere. You have to address things where they're at, not where you want them to be or where you think they're at. You have to meet them where they're at. The value of a Dharma teacher, who is a true teacher, teaches out of what they see. They don't need books. Their students might read all kinds of books, and they might ask questions out of the books, because those are the concepts about the nature of reality. If someone sees this, you don't need to read a book about it. What was the question?
If ego doesn't exist, why do you talk about it?
I like to talk about it. It's fun. It's always fun to talk about a clown because they aren't real. They have a big red nose, they try to be real, but if you see what it is, but if you don't see what it is, it can be terrifying. Look at Stephen King's horror writer, image of a clown, and I can't remember, was it? Yeah, that movie is terrifying, partially because the clown looks so friendly. I mean, they had a red nose, but it's unreal. So I talk about it because it is the aspect of confusion, which is called duality, believing there's someone here and there's someone else out there. This is untrue. It's relatively true, of course. I'm over here, but that's only if there's a strong body-mind connection. Your identity is with body-mind, as Dogen said in the 13th century. Drop off body-mind. He said, get rid of it, but see your fixation on the body as being somebody, me, and the mind as being my mind. There is no ownership. Drop off body and mind. When you do that, notice the fixation you have on it. If you see the clinging, it will drop away of its own. Why? Because it's not real. And then you begin to see reality, which is what? Two words, not separate. Any other questions? Questions out in, I can't see everyone there because there's 42 people on there, so I can't see everyone. So if you have a question, you could just come on and you could either do a show or you could, yeah, go ahead, nice show.
Nice show, bowing. What is intention without self?
Without self?
Yes.
If you mean if someone has seen through the self, how do they intend? So without any singularity in terms of a personhood, and there's just dependent origination, and even though there's a human being there, then it operates totally situationally. When hungry, eat. Chop wood, carry water. It's very, very situational. And if the person happens to be a Dharma teacher, then those situations arise in the form of what? Students. And so that's without self. The self may still be there, but it's unreal. You don't have to get rid of anything. Be a transcendental pack rat. I am. Get rid of anything. Because if you get rid of something, then the illusion that you're getting somewhere is there. And ego just munches on that all day. It might as well be eating Pop-Tarts. Loves the feeling of getting somewhere. I'm getting somewhere. I'm getting so much more clear, and I'm so much more peaceful, and blah, blah, blah. Not interested. You don't need that. You don't need a payoff on the spiritual path. You need to intend to save all beings, as I would put it. And all that really is seeing what this is, seeing who this is, and seeing what that is. And it probably will not happen just spontaneously without a little bit of intention. Other questions? You guys already know everything then? No questions? Not any questions? No questions? No questions? No questions in here. Well, if I don't see some out there, maybe we'll just close. And as I said, I can't.
Kelly Bowing.
Go ahead, Kelly.
The more that I sit, the more I feel like time goes by faster, and then I want to just put more time for that. But I worry that maybe that's covering up other things outside of the meditation. Like I want to sit to avoid other things. can meditation sometimes, can we use it can we use meditation to avoid things in life? Bowing.
I think so. I think it's possible. But the interesting thing about the doing part, I'm going to do this, I'm going to go meditate, is that it's of all the things you're doing in your life, basically that's doing less. It's a very minimal activity. So you're minimizing everything without struggle. You're not struggling with it. It's not particularly yoga, and I'm not against yoga. I'm all for yoga. You teach yoga, actually. So but that's a different kind of discipline. So to sit down, hold very still, and not do anything, but just observe, just be an observer, just like you're just hanging out on the corner, watching the people go by, watching the birds, watching the pigeons, watching the clouds, watching the fish, just observing. That's the mind stream. So if you might call it an avoidance if you move to a mountaintop and never talk to anybody again and just meditate for 24/7 or something like that. But to meditate, may I ask how much you meditated in the last 3 days?
The last 3 days.
Or 5 days or 8 days or?
Oh, I don't even know if I can go back that far. I'd say in the last 3 days, I've been trying to get to 4, but I think I'm getting between 2 and 3 hours each day.
Do you need some help there? You want some feedback from me?
Yeah.
You're not wasting your time, and you're not avoiding anything.
Thank
Not
you.
avoiding, just continue. Welcome. Yokodo.
Yokodo bowing. If you were talking about boredom as giving up on entertainment, but if boredom seems to be replaced by some kind of curiosity, is that just looking for more entertainment?
Possibly, but it's also, you're aware of that. So the awareness is there also. The inquiry into the situation becomes more and more refined and more precise. This is called prajna. Prajna actually the awareness starts to align itself with the thought process in such a way that we start to deepen our insight into. But you've been meditating for many, many years. You've done retreats, and so you've been meditating a long time. Just keep going. If you want to check, I would say, am I holding still? Check. Am I sitting symmetrical? Check. Is my back as straight as my particular body will allow me to sit? Check. You got it. Are my eyes open? Check. And I could go on and on. There's 15 or 20 other checks, but it's basically, are you just endeavoring, intending to just observe whatever arises, including that open plane of boredom, that kind of cool boredom Trungpa Rinpoche talks about. At first, it's the hot boredom where you don't want to be there, you're antsy, and that can come and go. That you can suddenly, if you start to grasp onto this cool boredom that he talks about, it'll suddenly erupt in a volcano or something somewhere. Could be. But what you're doing is it's just curiosity about it. You just watch what's moving, and there can be curiosity. That's human realm, curiosity. It's not one of the 6 realms. It's just curious about the nature of thoughts. Curious about dreams. Dreams are interesting. We go back through a dream and we notice we can remember parts of it, and then other parts we can't, and we're curious about, we almost immediately go into, I wonder why I would dream that. That's so bizarre. Of course, you might not have bizarre dreams. Or maybe you don't dream at all. Some people say that. More, Yokodo?
Yokodo bowing. A second, maybe unrelated question was about your response to Juzan about leaving Shikantaza. Sometimes if I notice that if my eyes kind of wander off from the center of the wall, it indicates I've followed some kind of daydream. Is that leaving Shikantaza?
Yes. But you're aware that you're leaving it. You in particular, if you don't mind me being more personal, you have a way of, when I watch you in an interview, your eye movements, we've talked about it before, I can almost tell when you're leaving what's in front of you for what you're thinking about it. Your eye movements will move off to one side. We should have you do some brain spotting. Or have you done that already? Oh, that's right, you have. Okay. Come up with anything?
Oh, yes. Thank you, Senshu.
She here? Senshu is always somewhere. Luckily. Yes, go ahead.
A question from Naveed.
Who?
Naveed.
Naveed, okay.
I've been listening to you for a while now, Sokuzan, and you've been talking about dependent origination. Could you please elaborate on it a little?
I can a little bit, but it's a simple statement, but it's very complex to be able to deconstruct that in such a way that it will help you enter into a fundamental understanding of it. Because a fundamental understanding of Shikantaza or of a Pratitya Samutpada or dependent origination is you won't know it. If you know it, then there's somebody who's separate from it who knows that. Or wisdom. Wisdom, I don't know how else to say it. I wish I did. So to make it simple, show and tell. This are two separate things, not separate. They're fundamentally not separate, but they aren't separated and we push them together. They are from beginningless time, they are not separate. Any form that arises anywhere is not separate from any other form, whether it's a memory you had of a fish pond that you saw when you were 6 years old, or something that happened to you last week, or something that's going to happen to you in 3 weeks that you don't really even aren't aware of yet. Those are not separate. They're separated. They're incredibly separated. That's why it's so confusing. Because we take the ego mind, the self-centered mind, the seventh consciousness, that aspect of the mind that is operating out of an incredible intelligence, which also creates incredible fear, wants to select and pick and choose and stop this and start that and control. Watch the news. I mean, I'm not recommending you watch the news, but if you watch the news, it's just such profound confusion, and sometimes backed up by really, really intelligent, insightful people, reporters, politicians. I don't know about politicians. So that have a kind of certainty about being right and a certainty about others being wrong that is powerful. You can't vote and save the world. I'm not saying that you couldn't help it some, but it doesn't look so good over here. Because without mind training, without seeing your true nature, even in the Sangha, without seeing your true nature, you'll go to war. You go to war with somebody, something you don't understand. Because what? You think you understand it. You think you understand it. Well, yeah, I got this. You got that? You got what I got? Well, I think I got what you got. You got what I'm getting you got? Not really. You want to explain more? Yeah, let's have a conversation about this craziness. Circular. If you see what this is, all the circles stop, including the moon. Don't believe me. As I say often, don't believe, don't disbelieve, don't look away. Perhaps give me the benefit of the doubt since you're here, you're listening, you're asking questions. Hopefully you are. Dependent origination. Nothing comes from its own side as a singularity, even though it has eyes and ears, nose, tongue, body, mind, stature, sexual orientation, and a date and time when they were born, when they think they were born. That's not birth. That's just a human form coming and going. Your true birth will be into reality. Beginning with if you're on this path, with the birth of devotion. Good luck. If you want my help, I'm here. If you don't, go do something else. I have nothing to sell, nothing to promise. It's not a cheap merchandising mentality where if you do this, you'll get that. You might not get anything. Sorry if my tone is getting rough. Go ahead.
A question from John.
Who?
John.
Which John?
John D.
John D? That's a ship, isn't it? A John D? Go ahead, John D.
Is hot boredom aversion?
A version of what? It is what shows up when in the initial stages when one sits down and begins to practice Shikantaza, or even Shini and Lakdong, Shamatha Vipassana, any kind of even the Vipassana forms of Theravada. So there's a hot antsiness that shows up there. So that's just wiggling around. It could show up the way you're asking about it. The way you were asking about it could show up that way, but I think it's much simpler than that. It's just what happens before you eventually settle down and watch what moves. Yes.
A question from Marco in Seattle.
Seattle? Okay.
I find in daydreams that there is a lot of activity behind the eyes, but shifting the awareness toward the back of the skull, where the spine connects down to Hara, brings me back to now. Is this a common experience?
No, actually, if you're trying to practice Shikantaza, this is a misunderstanding. What you're practicing is fine. Do it all you want. But there is no such thing as now. That's a concept invented by ego to fool you into thinking you're in the now. Don't use it. This is not a path of accomplishments, even though it's laid out that way. That's in order to give you something to do while you're realizing your true nature. So I'm not saying what you're saying there could be something to that. Going down the back of the spine, and it could be. I don't mean to make light of it, so it could be. But what I'm teaching is see what this is. And how do you do that? Train your mind to see clearly. So when you get up off the cushion in post-meditation, you actually stop, or you lessen your tendency to project onto things because you don't know what they are. So ego mind, if it doesn't know what something is, it immediately judges it, and it'll do it with paranoia, it'll do it with preconceptions, it'll do it with somebody's skin color, or their posture, or the tone of their voice. It'll do anything but meet things, people, human beings, with their awareness. And when you meet somebody, just if your awareness is leading, that can be scary, depending on how much narcissism is still going on, propelled by whatever causes and conditions that brought you into this lifetime in the first place. So Shikantaza, sit down, hold still, watch what moves, and that sharpens the blade. So when you get up off from the cushion, more clarity about what is happening. And again, I want to say, whatever you're talking about there, going down the spine or any of that, and bring us into the now, I just don't teach that. If you have a teacher that's teaching that, go talk with them, or her, or them. Talk with them about it.
Augie Bowing.
Augie, go ahead.
If I'm absorbed in a daydream and no longer seem to be aware of my sensations or the wall, is that still receiving?
Yes. Yeah, it is. Now, Shikantaza, what I'm saying is you don't have to particularly argue with any forms that are forms. If it's a daydream, if it's falling asleep, if once you sit down on the cushion, anything that occurs, including getting up and going for a walk because you don't want to sit there anymore, shikantaza. You might want to come back and strike the bell at the end of the period you designed, or you specified, or you agreed to in your mind stream. I'm going to sit here for 2 hours, and after an hour you get up, then come back at the end of that other hour, even though you went out and sat in your lawn chair and drank lemonade. Watch the birds come and go. And go back in and end the period. So in other words, hold the form, observe the form. Don't obey the form. A little bit difficult to understand sometimes, but just hold the form, set up the form, obey the form. Do as good as you can with it without being too macho with yourself or trying to live up to some kind of ideal. Not that you're going to do that, but I'm just saying, that's shikantaza. I mean, I would have to crawl into your mind stream and look at which particular daydreams you were having, but I mean, one of those daydreams might not be shikantaza, but I wouldn't worry about it. Everything gets bleached out eventually.
Augie bowing. So it doesn't matter then if I only become aware later that I was no longer aware of the wall or the sensations.
Well, in a sense, everything matters, but it doesn't matter in the way that you're talking about it. Am I leaving shikantaza, or am I? I'm not sure what the consideration was, but it sounds very straightforward to me. The commentary on top of it is the way in which you move or moving, which it modifies somewhat the receiving part of it, but not enough to worry about, I don't think. Not only I don't think, I'm pretty sure I'm not going to modify it. Just continue.
Augie bowing. So part of, I think, the confusion I may fall into then is receiving while talking to someone. And the last thing we want to do probably is drift off into a daydream if we're trying to receive someone, 90-10, for example. So I think I'm probably getting confused with that completely different environment, isn't it?
Yeah, confusion is good. You're looking at the confusion. This is what the Buddha saw. Only he didn't see just the confusion in Augie's mind. He saw the confusion everywhere because there no longer was anything but mind. This doesn't mean there's a tabletop. Of course there is. I'm not going to get silly about it. Chop wood, carry water. Chop wood, carry water. Simple idea. Have a further one, Junchu?
Question from Benjamin Swarta. How can I put myself first and stop sacrificing myself for others without feeling bad about it?
Probably can't. Probably going to have to feel bad about it. Important thing with that kind of a question, I would say, is find some time to put yourself first. If you don't put yourself first, you can't really help others because you're still trying to get a credential for being a helpful person. That's not helping people. You're actually putting yourself first in a very selfish way. You're trying to look like a person who's helpful, look like a person who's saving the animals. I'm not saying you aren't saving the animals, of course you are, but all the careers that have to do with helping people, of course they're helpful, but it's a mundane path. So in your situation, I'm sensing a little bit what's happening. I would say I wouldn't concern myself too much with trying to correct that or fix it. Just sit more so you get more insight into the very question you just asked. For me to give you a response, it sounds too much like, oh, it's a project you have to do. Like feeling sorry for yourself, I think, was that what he's, yeah. So I would say continue, don't stop feeling sorry for yourself. Find out if there is one. How do you do that? Face the wall, sit down, hold still, train your mind, return to the three jewels, or do it on your own. Any further? Where are we at time-wise? Huh? It's 12:15, so I'll take one more if you have it. Good to see all of you.
Augie bowing.
But
I catch myself, or I notice now, cringing. I catch myself cringing, and that's one reason I know I'm not seeing the wall anymore because my eyes have almost locked shut in this cringe.
Yeah.
Is that a sign of rejection, of aggression?
Yes,
Sorry.
we could elaborate. Is it a sign of this or a sign of that? The most important thing is that is your object of meditation. That's what's arising. It's arising in your mind. So you're sitting and you start to feel that feeling, just insofar as you can, be with that or observe that, however you want to say that. Observe that is best, or receive that. Maybe receiving is best, but don't overdose on it. Receive that, and then say you're going to sit for an hour. I'm just going to make something up. And after 45 minutes, you start to have this cringing feeling. Say, don't strike the gong yet, but just move your body. Open your eyes for sure. It should be open, although you don't even maintain open eyes. You intend to have open eyes, and then you watch how much you need to close them. This way, we're actually working with the whole body-mind conflagration as it is, rather than try to make somebody do something that somebody else does really well, but this person is going to have a difficult time. So get up in the middle, we'll get a drink of water, come back and see if the cringing is still there. See if the cringing follows you in the bathroom. If it does, then give it a good kick. Okay, we can close. Thank you so much.
Even there, this penetrate into all places, so that we and every sentient being together can realize the Buddha's way. Ji-ho san shi shi fu shi song gu sa mo ko sa wo ko ja ho ro mi. The 10 directions to the 3 worlds, all Buddhas, all venerable ones, Bodhisattvas, Mahasattvas, the great Prajna, Paramita. All Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the 10 directions and the 3 times, please hear us. Please come down out of the light and protect Sokuzan Buddhist Temple Monastery, its buildings, gardens, and all adjoining areas from any and all dark or negative energy. Remove and dissolve any negative energy or devices. Fill everything and everyone with light. Please shield and protect with light our teachers, monks, students, and all practitioners of the Dharma, our families and friends from negative forces and energy from now on. Help us to realize the truth of the Buddha's teaching